It's an interesting experience where you leave and you embed yourself in another society. And then like at first, you still kind of feel like you're of the country that you came from. But the longer you're away, the more that identity leaves you. And you sort of become the identity of the place that you're living. And then your old place begins to feel more and more foreign. And then eventually you're like, I have no connection to that other place. I don't want to be tied to it at all.
It's a very unnatural relationship. It's like getting married to somebody, but you're still texting your ex-boyfriend every day.
Right.
Cut that off.
Exactly.
Oh, God. Welcome to a video version of Badass Digital Nomads podcast. I'm your host, Kristin Wilson, and my guest today is a fellow YouTube subscriber named Erica Lind, who is sharing with us her experience renouncing her U.S. citizenship. We're talking about why she decided to renounce in the first place, the pros and cons of doing so, and exactly step by step how the process works, including the cost, and why she decided to fly to Mexico to speed up the process. I learned so much from Erica's experience, and I hope that this video gives you the information and perspective you need to decide if renouncing your U.S. citizenship is something that's right for you. Let's jump in. Okay, Erica, welcome officially to Badass Digital Nomads podcast. Where are you calling in from right now?
I am in Vancouver, BC, in Canada.
One of my favorite cities in the world. Ironically, I was snowboarding in Whistler. That was my last international destination before the pandemic. So I was en route to Europe from Canada to Florida, stopped in Miami for a couple months, which turned into a year. I spent New Year's Eve of 2020 in Vancouver eating sushi at my favorite restaurant at Miku. So good. But yeah, such a great place to base yourself. How long have you been there?
I've been here for about 5 years. I was born and I grew up in Washington State, but my mother is Canadian. So I have a lot of relatives that are from BC. Even though I just moved to Vancouver 5 years ago, it doesn't really seem like a foreign place, if that makes sense. Like I was already familiar with it even before I finally moved up here.
So were you born with dual nationality, or is this something, okay?
Yeah. If you have a parent that's born in Canada, then you automatically get Canadian citizenship.
Okay, that's convenient. So that was one of my questions for later. Did you get another passport yet? But you already have one.
It's difficult to get Canadian.
Yes.
Canada is one of the most difficult countries to migrate into.
Definitely. And one of the most expensive if you don't have a high demand reason for being there, like a skill, if you're a skilled worker.
Yeah, they have these programs with points where if you have college degrees and if you speak foreign languages and if you've got professional job experience, then it's easier to get in, but it's still no guarantee. That just allows you to enter this lottery system. And then they just like randomly draw from the pool and you might get invited to immigrate in.
Yeah, it's very high stakes. And a lot of people don't know that I've worked with poker players and sports bettors and people in the gaming industry for 10 years. And actually, professional poker player is considered being an athlete in Canada. So you can qualify for Canadian either permanent residency or get on a path to citizenship through being a professional poker player athlete. But the catch is you have to be one of the best in the world and you have to be able to prove that. And it was one of our most popular destinations. Now with the pandemic, it's been closed. So we really haven't done any relocations to Canada since February of 2020. And that was our probably number one or number two destination with Costa Rica. And what do you do for work?
So I'm a systems admin at a large manufacturing company.
And how long have you been working there? Were you working there when you lived in the US as well?
No, I've been here at this place for about 2.5 years. When I first moved up to Vancouver, I was working kind of more of a help desk role at another tech company. And I was there for about 2 years. And then after that, I moved over to where I am now.
Okay. And so just to clarify for the audience, you were able to get these jobs because you had citizenship already. So you didn't need any sort of work permit or
Right.
documentation or anything.
Yeah,
Okay.
they wouldn't have sponsored. It really depends
Mm-hmm.
on the job to really get sponsored. You need to be in some kind of higher seniority level where maybe your expertise is so valuable that it couldn't be filled locally. To get that through with the Canadian immigration
Yeah.
is really difficult. Most of the people that come in will apply for the express entry, where the Canadian government just gives them a permanent resident status because they are credentialed enough to be a good quality immigrant. And so then once they get that, then they can just move in and go and get a job. But I think if to come here without that and be sponsored by a company would probably be really difficult.
Yeah, it's very strict. It's going to be really interesting to see how Canada reacts to this shift to remote work because you could get turned away for saying that you were working on your laptop. And so
Oh,
many countries are doing these digital nomad visas and remote work visas. But I wonder if Canada will really jump on board with that or if they'll get stricter against remote workers that are
yeah,
just going to Canada to hang out and work
I think
online.
because I think that Canada looks at, well, how will this immigrant contribute to the Canadian society? I don't think that they're really placing a lot of value in just like having someone be here while they work for a remote company and then maybe they're going to leave and go back home in 2 to 5 years. I think they're looking for people that are going to be paying into the tax system. It's like, okay, well, we want someone that's going to come and stay for the rest of their lives. So like it may not be worthwhile for Canada just to have someone that's going to come and work on their laptop and maybe they pay into the local economy, but they're not really paying into the tax system and then they're going to leave after 2 years.
Right. And, I'm sure that Canada values tourism dollars, but it must be a smaller part of GDP compared to countries like Costa Rica and
Yeah.
Thailand and Indonesia, where tourism is their bread and butter. Iceland comes to mind. So I don't think they have as big of an incentive to encourage remote workers. I haven't heard any whispers of a Canada remote work visa of any kind.
Yeah.
So I feel like they'll be one of the later adopters of that. And possibly when there is some certainty with regard to taxation, or that might actually be a mandatory part of the visa, is opting into the tax system the way that Estonia and Croatia and some other countries have it if you stay a certain number of days. And given that in a lot of countries, if you stay more than 180 or 81 or 83 days, you can be considered a tax resident. And knowing that US citizens, for example, can go to Canada with just a passport on a tourist visa for up to 180 days, I can
Mm-hmm.
see how if they it wouldn't cost them that much to let remote workers come for 1 year because there's already an option to extend for another 180 days if you can prove that you have enough money to be there and you're going to be
Yeah.
spending money and contributing. So I can see them allowing a 1 year visa, but with that condition of some sort of tax obligation or high fee, like a high income. That'll be interesting to see. On that note, I was thinking I'll be doing some videos on Canada reopening and certainly if they make any mention of this. But so let's talk about renouncing your citizenship. What led you to decide to renounce your citizenship? Why not just keep both?
Well, it's just being an expat is difficult. I guess for me, I didn't really feel American. And I decided that I didn't want to ever go back and live there again. So then it's like, okay, well, what value do you have in keeping the US citizenship? And I already kind of was in disagreement with the values of America and the US government and the equal rights of people and all that political stuff. So it just seemed like this is a society that I didn't want to be connected to anymore. Um, but probably the biggest, like the straw that broke the camel's back, you could say, is just all the tax filing. It's just really difficult. You have to file a US tax report every year. Then I have to do the paper form because they don't allow you to e-file if you're using the foreign income exclusions.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to pay because the free versions don't allow you to do the income exclusion. And then to pay, you have to use a credit card with a billing address that's based in the US, and they don't allow you to use any of your foreign credit cards. So then I have to go and get somebody to let me use their credit card. Like, it's just a big headache. And then I think that as I grew in my career success, it just became more and more inconvenient, because once you have a certain amount of money in the bank accounts, then you have to declare your bank accounts to the IRS. And if you have investments for retirement, you have to declare those. And then if you buy property, you have to report that back to the IRS.
And these are all separate forms for people listening.
Yeah.
It's not just you report it on your tax return.
Yeah.
It's like there's a whole nother form to fill out. There could be tax implications for this investment or this property or this.
Yeah, because the capital gains are not exempt. So like if I live and work in Canada and make money here, and then I go and buy a house, I have to report that back to the IRS. And then let's say I sell the house, and then the value has gone up. So then you have to pay capital gains tax on that to the United States, which to me doesn't make any sense. And it started to like grate on me as time went on. Like, it's not fair and it's not right. Like, I shouldn't have to pay taxes to the US on foreign assets and my foreign lifestyle that has nothing to do with down there. So yeah, it just started to like get into me personally after several years of all of this. And so then I finally was like, okay, I'm not going back. It's bothering me that I have to do all this. And so then I started, looking into, okay, how do you renounce?
Yeah, especially if you have no intention of going back. Like, it's one thing if you go abroad for 5 years or 10 years and you chalk this up to a sunk cost or paperwork cost, headache that you're going to have to deal with for a few years before coming back. But it's quite another if your career is taking off in another country, you have roots, your whole life there, and then you're just as an afterthought reporting everything and filing back in the US. And then I would imagine that once you exhausted that foreign earned income exclusion, you're paying additional income taxes as well for services that you're not using, infrastructure that you're not using, healthcare that you're not using because you're, part of the Canadian healthcare system. And this also is, your answers are really consistent with the number one reason that people said they wanted to renounce their citizenship was the complexity of filing US tax returns. And so it's unfortunate that it's affecting a small percentage of the population, but for us, it is a huge annoyance and an expensive one.
If I had like the traditional digital nomads where they go to another country and but they still continue to operate in the US financial system, then I think it like makes sense. Like, if you're just working remotely while you work for some US company and you still use your US bank accounts, and maybe you'll move back or something, like maybe then it makes sense. But when you've completely separated your entire lifestyle from the US systems and you've settled into a foreign country and you're then using their systems, like after a while, it's an interesting experience where you leave and you embed yourself in another society. And then like at first, you still kind of feel like you're of the country that you came from. But the longer you're away, the more that identity leaves you, and you sort of become the identity of the place that you're living. And then your old place begins to feel more and more foreign as the years go on. And then eventually you're like, I have no connection to that other place. I don't want to be tied to it at all.
It's a very unnatural relationship. It's like getting married to somebody, but you're still texting your ex-boyfriend every day.
Right.
Cut that off.
Exactly.
Oh, God. Do you think that you would have renounced your US citizenship if you didn't have Canadian citizenship? Would you have sought out a second passport and still gone through the process?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would have moved if I didn't already have a second citizenship. Because a lot of people go through all this work, like they go to a school so they can get in with a student visa, or maybe they just want to travel and they find all these online jobs, and that didn't really appeal to me. That I left just because I favor the Canadian system. And it was easy for me. I already had the Canadian passport, so I just packed up all my stuff and drove up to the border and say, I'm moving here, I'm Canadian, and they let you in. Oh, so I don't know if I would have gone through all that you have to go through to immigrate if it,
Let's say hypothetically, if you were to say before you went through the process and after, was the process so difficult that you would do it again?
Yeah. It was difficult, and mostly just because it's difficult to figure out how to do it. There's no one central website or something that gives you all the instructions. You basically have to just contact an embassy and say, hey, I'm interested in doing this. What do I do? And then usually they'll have some kind of auto response where they send you these instructions and they give you the documents that you have to fill out and all this kind of stuff. And I did that for the Canadian one. And then they write back saying like, oh, this could take like 2 years. Like I think even before the pandemic, there was like a 2-year wait, 1 to 2 year wait just to get an appointment and to do it. And then like all of last year, they just completely stopped processing applications. So it was like, okay, this could take 3 years if I do it here, even though I'm ready to do it. And then by this point, I'd saved up the money for the fees, so the money wasn't a problem. And then I think at that point, I started contacting other countries because I know like some parts of the world you can just go to and it's no problem to get in. In my case, I went down to Mexico. So it was like, well, if I can fly down to Mexico, you can get an appointment in a month from now. But if I wait to do it in Canada, I'd have to wait 3 years. Like, what's the sense in that?
Was that at the U.S. Embassy in Mexico or the Canadian?
No, it's the U.S. Embassy. So you have to do it at a U.S. Embassy that's outside of the United States.
Okay, let's walk back through this process because I want to get like the exact step-by-step details for people because it seems like a really convoluted process, unnecessarily, like lots of paperwork. So bring us back to the day that you decided to start looking into this. Do you remember approximately when that was, when you started exploring how to renounce your citizenship?
Oh, I would probably have been thinking about it on the back burner for several years.
Okay.
It was probably only, I'd say, within the past 6 months where I was really motivated to do it. And I had the money saved up for it. I had all the documents together where I was like ready to pull the trigger. But I'd kind of been thinking about it in the back of my head for several years. And I'd be like searching on YouTube and searching like, how do you do this? Where do you go? And what do you have to do? And then the whole thing with COVID, they've been shutting down all these services at various embassies. So it's like, well, are they just trying to stop people from doing it? Because it kind of feels like the U.S. doesn't want to let people go. They make it more and more difficult.
Yeah, I think that it's a bit of a casual side effect of the process because one of the reasons I came to Miami was to try to get my Romanian citizenship through my grandfather, but the consulate closed during the pandemic because every government agency closed. And so I think that was just a coincidence. I definitely don't think that the US government wants to encourage anyone to give up their citizenship because when you think of the lifetime value of that person as a customer, if you think of US citizens as customers of the government or the IRS, that is extremely lucrative revenue stream if you live to be 70, 80, 100 years old. And so of course they don't want people to sever that tie. They don't want to make it really easy. They want to probably discourage it in some way, but I don't know if they have the intentions or the resources to actually put up lots of extra barriers the way that allegedly the government in Florida did to keep people from claiming unemployment, for example.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not like that. But I think that the US government doesn't, like, the interests of expats are not
a priority
at all.
No.
But yeah, so basically the process was I emailed all these different countries, the US embassies, and I eventually found one that was taking cases. This was in the Yucatan state in Mexico, where I guess COVID was not that bad. And so the embassies were still operating.
That's amazing. That's so resourceful. To
But yeah,
start and finish this process during the pandemic and to do it
yeah.
from Mexico is outstanding.
So yeah, and so I'd contacted 5 or 6 other countries before I'd come to this embassy. And you just have to individually contact them. It's not like there's one centralized
Yeah.
system where it's like, oh, well, this place is taking applications. You have to, they're not really talking to each other. So I contacted a bunch of different places. Eventually, I found one in Mexico. I sent them my documents. And then I think that they kind of space it out in these steps because they want you to reconsider.
Mm.
So I think it was probably a month after I emailed them my documents before they set up a phone appointment. I think normally you would have 2 in-person appointments before COVID, but now they just do the phone appointment as the first one. And that's basically just to explain all the legal repercussions of what you're giving up. And they're like, you understand you won't be able to live in the country anymore. And if you come visit, you'll be visiting as a foreign visitor and no longer as a US citizen and all this
You
kind
go
of
in the
stuff.
other line, no
Yeah.
global entry.
Right.
Or maybe because you're Canadian. Okay, so your first step was mulling it over in your head, like, maybe I should renounce my citizenship someday, or maybe this is something that would be realistic to me, beneficial to me. Your next step was then Googling, how the heck do I do this? Where do I start? Probably hitting a lot of dead ends, outdated information. And then you started basically cold calling and emailing US institutions in the US and in other countries and trying to figure out the timeline for how long it would take. And you were able to reduce it from like 2 to 3 years down to 6 months.
Or less than that. In fact, when I contacted the Mexico embassy, I had my phone appointment. And they're like, okay, well, let's have you come in next month for an in-person visit. So like I was like a month away. And in my head, I had planned that it would take so much longer than that. And then when they're like, okay, you can come in a month from now, I actually had to postpone the appointment because I needed extra time to get ready for the trip.
So you literally fly to Cancun and then, or where was the
This
office?
was in Merida.
Okay, so you would have flown to Cancun probably from, were you in Canada already?
Yeah, so I drove to Washington.
Okay.
And I still had the US passport at that point, so I was able to drive across the border. And then I flew from there to Texas, and I changed planes in Texas, and then I flew from there down to Mexico. But yeah, it was so many steps. I remember being at the office and at the in-person appointment and explaining like what it went through to physically get there. And then she was like, wow, you must really want to do this.
What month was this in the pandemic?
This was just recently. This was April,
Oh, this was April of 2021 that you finalized it.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. This is fascinating. What were some of the documents that were required to complete this process?
So you have to send them proof of your US citizenship and also proof of your foreign citizenship. So you have to send them both
So
your
you
passports.
have to you can't be a stateless citizen. You have to have another passport.
I believe that the law doesn't technically forbid being stateless, but they don't want you to be stateless.
They might not approve you if you didn't have another citizenship.
Yeah, so basically you go through this application and then the consular official is making a recommendation to the State Department to have you lose your citizenship. So if you don't have a good case or situation, like they could not recommend it. Basically.
Politely decline you.
So when you apply, you have to show both of your passports because you have to prove that you have another citizenship, and then you have to show like social security cards and birth certificates because they have to verify that you really are a US citizen. And then your photo IDs and all kinds of stuff. So you email that to them and then you do the appointment. So by the time you come for the in-person appointment, it's basically all planned out that you have a successful case. Because I don't think they would even schedule you to come in unless everything was in order.
Did you consult with any accountants or lawyers or any sort of professionals, or did you go through the requirements and you felt like you could handle getting together all the documents you needed?
Well, I had all the documents. You basically just photocopy your passports and your birth certificate and your social security card and all that kind of stuff. And then I'd been filing my taxes every year as an expat. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be more complicated if you had other tax situations, like if you had property and if you're like a really high net worth where you might have to deal with exit taxes, then it
Yeah.
probably would have been more complicated. My case wasn't that complicated because I didn't have any of that stuff. So I could just say I've been filing my taxes, I don't know any tax, and so therefore there's no problem.
You weren't Eduardo Severin, the Facebook co-founder, or Adam Bilzerian, Dan Bilzerian's brother. They probably had a little bit more paperwork to do, I would imagine, being such allegedly high net worth individuals.
Yeah. So for me, it was just like, because a lot of people probably renounce for financial reasons. Like maybe
Right.
they have a business or they've got all these properties and they've got all these things. Maybe they're trying to separate because of taxes. For me, it was just kind of personal reasons. And I didn't really have any really complicated financial system that would have gotten in the way. But I did contact lawyers and things just to sort of get some information, because it's like, what if someone has student loans and then they're on some kind of repayment plan and then you're like, okay, well, how is this going to affect that? So I think it is advisable to speak to a lawyer and just to sort of understand all of the repercussions to what's going to happen before doing it.
Right. Were there any repercussions that you discovered during the process that you weren't expecting?
Not really. The only thing I was a little bit concerned about was getting home because I had traveled through the US to get there. So then my thought was, okay, well, if they take the US passport, what happens if I go back to the US because my car is parked at Seattle Airport, right? So what happens if I try to fly back to the US and then they don't let me in? Because then I was thinking in my head, like, because they're going to ask you why you're coming, and then what if I have to explain that I went there to renounce, and then they have the discretion not to let any visitor in. So I was kind of like, well, what could happen? Fortunately, the embassy was really helpful and they allowed me to keep the US passport.
Wow. I didn't
Yeah,
even
they
think about
didn't.
that.
Yeah, they let me keep the passport.
Until it expires, or you just.
Basically, yeah. So they said you can keep the passport for your trip home, but then you need to return it. So after I got here and I went through the 2-week quarantine to enter Canada, then I went to the U.S. Embassy in Vancouver and went to hand in the passport. But I remember the experience of coming back. I was flying through Miami. That was like my entry to the United States to come back.
Always a complicated place to
Yeah.
enter.
And so, yeah, because you change planes and then you have to go through security again, and then you have to go through the US Customs. And I remember being on this plane full of Mexican people, and they had to have their visas and all this kind of stuff just to get into the United States. And I was like one of the only people on the plane to be able to go through the US citizen line.
For the
And
last time.
yeah, and I remember because you had a plane full of people that were lined up in the customs processing and they were being asked all of these questions, and they might have to wait in line for 30 minutes or an hour because they got to check everybody and ask them all the questions. And I went up through the US citizen line, didn't have to wait for anybody. They basically just said, "Or do you have anything to declare?" And then I didn't, so I said no, and then I was through in like less than 30 seconds.
Wow.
And I was thinking to myself, this was the one shot. I'm never going to have this experience again.
That is so surreal. Wow. How did it feel when you got to Canada?
It didn't really feel any different because I'd already been living here for
Yeah.
5 years, and this was kind of the society that I was already used to. So I guess a sense of relief because I knew that I would no longer have to deal with any of the difficult entanglements.
I guess it's kind of like quitting a job or breaking up with somebody. Like it's a bit sad, a bit cathartic, a bit, you get like a little bit of buyer's remorse at the end, or I guess seller's remorse. You're like, am I making the right decision? But then you have this relief after.
Yeah. It's like I guess it's like breaking up with someone. Like the act of breaking up is stressful, but afterwards, it's the right decision. Right?
We speak from experience. Okay. How much did this cost? Just like the application process itself and then the exit fee.
So the processing fee is like 2,350 US dollars, and that is actually not refundable. So if you went and then the case wasn't successful, you wouldn't get the money back.
Okay.
So you really should make sure
Risky.
that all of your ducks are in a row before going. I didn't have exit tax. One, because if you have citizenship from birth, then you're automatically exempt from the exit tax. So since I wasn't a naturalized citizen, I had it from birth through a family situation, then you're automatically exempt from the exit tax. The second thing is I think there's exemptions up to several $1,000,000. So you'd have to be quite wealthy before you'd really get hit with the exit tax. So I wouldn't have had to pay anything anyway. But yeah, so there was that fee. And then since I went down to Mexico, it was the cost of the trip. So I probably spent a couple of $1,000s just on the trip itself. So yeah, it was, for me, it was, if it was purely a financial incentive, I probably wouldn't have done it. Because it's like, okay, you're spending $5,000 to do something when you don't owe any taxes anyway. So maybe you have to pay the $50 every year to file your tax return. So where's the financial sense in that? But for me, it was just, I had such a strong personal conviction that for me, it was worth it.
I would think too that the mental space and freedom that you would acquire through this process would be worth the $5,000, and probably lifetime you would end up spending at least that much in time and energy and probably miscellaneous taxes and filing and accounting fees to cover that 5,000 quickly.
And the stress, like this, it was just like a weight lifted off my shoulders. Because as an expat, you're always kind of thinking like, well, what if they find out about some bank account I have? Or what if I didn't declare that I had this retirement stock fund or something? Like, what am I going to get in trouble with the IRS? And so just knowing that all of that is gone, it was like a relief that I've felt safer and more comfortable and more at ease just in life generally since doing it.
Wow, that is significant. How long were you in Mexico total then? How long did the whole process take? Was it like 15 minutes in the office or an hour and then you leave?
So it was a little bit more complicated because of COVID, because you have to get a COVID test just to fly back to the United States. So I had to be there long enough to get tested, but I didn't want to be there longer than I had to be because then you have more risk of getting infected and getting trapped there. So I think I was there for about 3 or 4 days. And one thing I thought was really interesting was just the experience of going to Mexico was interesting.
Was that your first time?
Yeah. And before this, I had no interest in really going to like Central or South America. I would have never gone probably if it weren't for this reason. But I had such an amazing time.
I heard great things about Mérida.
Yeah, that's amazing. The food is just amazing. And there was warm weather the whole time. Everybody's friendly. But one thing I thought was really interesting was that even though the Mexico as a country, there's no COVID restrictions, but the individual people were more diligent about it than in the US. Like everybody was wearing masks. And if you went into a restaurant, they'd temperature check you on your forehead or your hand, and they'd make you hand sanitize before going into any store. And
they were self-regulating like Sweden.
Yeah. So like even people walking around outside were wearing masks, even when it's 100 degrees out, and people are still wearing masks outside. And when there's no law or government restriction telling them to do it, because whereas in the US, it's like a struggle to get anybody to do the right thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was there for about 4 days. I wanted to get a PCR test because you need a PCR to re-enter Canada. And I think that it can take 24 to 48 hours to get the results.
And like a couple $100.
Yeah, I had to pay about $300 worth, $200 or $300 to get that. But even that was pretty streamlined. You can set up with one of the labs ahead of time, and they'll just come to where you're staying and do the test. So you don't even have to go out to
hotel
anywhere.
Doctor.
Yeah, pretty much.
Interesting. Okay. So in total, the time you spent in the embassy was just one day or one afternoon?
So that was another whole experience. It basically took half a day. I thought that because I had emailed them all of my documents.
That they would have everything together
that
for
they would
you.
have everything together. So I got there and I didn't have any of the papers because they don't let you take anything in.
Yeah, I've gone to so many embassies, like passport pages and things, and you have to put all your stuff in a locker, and it's like high
Yeah.
security.
So I went there and I go up to pay. And then they said, well, where's all of your paperwork? I was like, well, you guys already have it. And they're like, well, you need to have a paper copy. And so they actually forced me to leave
Oh man,
to
this sounds
go
so
get
familiar.
copies.
Yeah.
And it was so difficult. And then because nobody speaks any English, I didn't know where to go. And then I'd left my cell phone at home because they tell you can't take a cell phone into the embassy.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I was like in a panic because I was
Trying
feeling
to
like, well,
find a place to print and
I
copy
have
stuff.
this appointment, and if it takes too long to get the paperwork, what if they cancel my appointment and then the whole trip is for a waste? And I didn't know where to go, and people on the street that I was trying to talk to didn't speak any English, and I didn't have my phone, so I couldn't translate. Eventually, I found this pretty nice hotel, and I went in, and they were gracious enough to let me use the computer and print off a copy of my documents.
So did you log into your email and get the documents? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I had emailed it to the embassy. So I just went
Check
to
in your
my
sent
to my
mail.
sent, printed it off, and I went back. It probably took about an hour to do that. I went back up in, and then went through the whole thing again.
Jumping
But it
through
was,
hoops. I have flashbacks of just trying to cross the Nicaraguan border and like running back and forth across the border with Costa Rica, getting like stamps on papers for my car and
Yeah.
things like that.
It was funny because I went back to give them the paperwork, and then I had already signed the forms, but they need you to sign the forms in front of them. So then they printed them off again. So you clearly have a printer. So you could have printed all this stuff. Like they didn't, they make it more difficult than it really needs to be.
Yeah. But yeah, it must have felt good when you were done. I hope you celebrated with like a margarita and some tacos.
For sure.
I heard the food was really good in Merida. So did you have any urge to go to Playa del Carmen or Tulum or any of those spots, or you were just there on a business trip?
Yeah, because I'm like, as a traveler, I'm really not into tourist destinations. So going to some place that would be like a resort with a big hotel or something like that doesn't really appeal to me. I am interested in going back to Merida and seeing some other parts of Mexico, but probably not the tourist resort areas.
Oh, I would definitely recommend it. I've been through like the interior, even Mexico City is really cool. There's so many different neighborhoods. And on that other podcast, Eric was comparing Bangkok to New York City. And then someone in the comments was like, I disagree. It's not like that at all. But I was thinking that Mexico City really does remind me of New York in the way that the neighborhoods are so distinct. Like if you went from Brooklyn to Manhattan to Chelsea to the Bronx or whatever, it's like that in Mexico City, and it's so huge. So when you're flying in, it kind of reminds you of New York, just a sprawling metropolis. But there's so much to see in Mexico. You have to binge watch the Tangerinis.
Yeah, I watched them, and now I can't wait to go back and to see some other towns. And it's because I would have never had that experience had it not been for the wait to get into the embassy in Canada. And so now I kind of feel like there's some kind of divine something in the universe maybe wanted this to happen, because if I hadn't had to go there, I would have probably never gone there otherwise. And now I had this amazing travel experience, and now I want to go back and see more.
Yeah, that's one thing leads to another, butterfly effect. But Mexico has this image of being dangerous, and I've traveled there probably like 5 times alone or 10 times.
I was concerned, but I know Merida is one of the safest cities in Mexico. And one thing that did help is where I work, we have a lot of people from Mexico because we have sites in Mexico. So we have people that we've brought up to work at the offices here. So I had a lot of people from Mexico that I was able to talk to, kind of to get like, oh, where's a good place to go, and where is it safe, and should I have cash, or like, I think without that, it would have been a lot more stressful.
Logistical questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you made it. Congratulations. Not like you made it through Mexico, but just this process.
And
How
now I'm
hard,
free.
yeah, how hard would you say it was on a scale of 1 to 10 to renounce your US citizenship?
I think the act of doing it is pretty easy. It depends on the person. For me, it
Mm,
wasn't difficult because I was definitely wanting to do it. So it depends on how strong is your dislike of the United States, and like how strong is your feeling of wanting to separate.
mm.
So for me, it was pretty strong, and I was willing to go through whatever difficult steps, but maybe someone else wouldn't feel that strongly, and maybe they'd be like, okay, well, I'll do it if it's convenient, but I'm not willing to go through all these other hoops.
And you mentioned your disagreement with some of the US values and politics. What were some of those that bothered you specifically?
I guess because I kind of like what we were talking about before, where I feel comfortable with the Scandinavian or kind of the socialist European
Mm,
values. In Canada has some of that. So like I believe there should be universal health care, and I believe the government should have programs to provide things to people that need it. Um, and the US is just not really like that. It's kind of like a capitalist, you're on your own system. And I just felt like the government is not kind in the way that a lot of the programs treat people, and I don't really approve of what the US government does all over the world, and all the equal rights for minorities and gay rights, and how the US treats trans people is really terrible. So a lot of those kind of political issues were things that made me unhappy with the US. And I remember being there when I was still living there, I had a lot of like anger, and it just like bothered me because I was still part of the system and I didn't like a lot of the things about how they operate. And now that I'm up here, I don't have that anger because I'm no longer a part of it. You kind of feel like, okay, well, they can do whatever they want and it doesn't affect me anymore. And I'm not going to get upset because now there's some other place, and I don't have to, so I don't really feel the negativity anymore because I'm not connected to it anymore.
You're making a really good case for renouncing your US citizenship. Like not in a way that you're trying to convince anyone of it, but it's just such an authentic and logical and rational argument for it. And I think it's very noble of you to be so principled and to take action based on how you're feeling. And I think you're reaping the benefits now of this peace of mind with
Yeah.
this angst that's just dissolved away from this symbolic act, but also tangible act of relinquishing not just this document, this travel document or piece of paper with a social security number on it, but like your nationality and like collective identity. You've kind of taken yourself out of that puzzle
Mm-hmm.
and joined, united with another country and government, political system and social welfare system, but also collective like ideology that resonates with you more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that cannot be understated with how significant that
Yeah.
is. And this is kind of coming full circle with a podcast I did. I think it was around the 2020 election. Did you hear the one that I did about the behavior of expat voters?
I think so.
And
Um,
how when people move abroad, I was curious to know why so many expats overwhelmingly vote so liberal. So they voted for Bernie Sanders in
well,
2016 and in 2020. And I was wondering if there was any correlation there.
my view, I guess, on that would be the people. I think most of the people that would have voted like Republican probably would have stayed in the United States
Mm,
because that's the system that they like. Like I think the US
mhm.
conservative value is that we should maintain the United States as it is right now, or maybe as it was when it was founded. So my guess would be that the people that are going to vote Republican like America a lot and wouldn't want to leave and go experience other places because America is the best, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but the people that do want to leave probably want to leave because they have other values, which might be different from the conservative values and might be more like how the Democrats or the leftists might be.
Yeah. This is all, I think these are anthropological conditions that people will study more in the years to come, but very interesting to hear your individual perspective on this and like how many layers there were to the decision making process. I know this has been a longer interview than I said it would be, but it's so fascinating. A couple more just I'm really curious, what was the reaction of your friends and family when you told them, or did you tell them, or did you wait until after?
So I've told my immediate family. Of course, my mom, it was interesting. She was saying that I shouldn't do it, but only because she thought that it would be a waste of money. And like she's Canadian and she never became American. So she can't, I mean, obviously she can't say, oh, you should be American when she never wanted to be. So she wasn't against it for that reason, but I think her position was more of the fiscally conscious person where be like, well, it'd be better just to use that same $5,000 and invest it. But I don't know, I'm younger and I have my whole working life to make more money. So I have the money to do it now. Like that wasn't really a reason to stop me. My sister, I don't know. I think they're happy if I'm happy and they understand that I don't really feel American anymore. And my dad was interesting because he's such a strong Republican, but he's also very strongly a libertarian. And he agrees with me that the practices of the US government in terms of foreign taxation is unfair. So he's kind of conflicted where like he is very pro-America, but at the same time, he understands my reasons for wanting to settle in Canada. So I don't think that he really faulted me for doing it. Most of my friends from the US, or even relatives that I knew are conservative, I just didn't tell and never didn't even, because
They'll never come across this podcast.
To them, it's kind of well, I mean, if they do, who cares? But
yeah,
a lot of them, there's probably a stigma to Americans because, oh, they're probably happy about America. So, but yeah, mostly I just didn't really mention it to anybody. So that like close friends I've talked to about it, but I haven't. I know this is kind of, I guess, broadcasting to the world.
But it's after the fact.
Yeah.
So you're not polling everybody saying, what do you think I should do? Right. I like that you came to this decision on your own. You did it.
Like I'm not going to contact a bunch of people in America that like America and are still living there and be like, oh, by the way, just so you know, I don't like it there and I'm leaving.
Because you already had left anyway. So yeah, they don't need to know.
Yeah.
And then I'm curious so you have paid into the Social Security system. Is that money just a sunk cost? Do you get any of that back after renouncing in the future?
No, you definitely don't get it back. I think if you had worked more than 10 quarters full time to where you're vested in the Social Security system,
you could actually get your checks.
Actually, maybe not. So my position was that I wouldn't be getting it anyway because I hadn't worked long enough in the US. So I thought, well, there's really nothing to lose at that point. Because like if I left and just remained a citizen, I still wouldn't have collected any Social Security because I hadn't worked there long enough.
Yeah. It would have been a nominal amount anyway at that point. I'll link to the IRS website just in case people want to search that. Because maybe if people are renouncing in their 70s, for example, that might be a bigger consideration. But I do think I researched this before. I think there might have been a way, but maybe it had to do with your age or something, or if you were vested. So
Yeah, I guess it depends on where your retirement income is going to come from. If you had worked your whole life for US companies and your retirement was in like US IRAs or whatever, or 401ks, if you went to another country to retire, but your retirement income was still coming from the United States, you'd still have to file US tax returns. So then you wouldn't really have gained anything. But
oh, right. Even after you renounce, you either have to file returns or you could be audited for a certain number of years.
So the next year, I'll have to file a US tax return next year for the portion of the year up until when I renounced. And then I think there is a form where you have to say, like, you have to certify and claim that you filed your tax returns for the past 5 years and don't have any outstanding tax that you owe. But yeah, just back to the whole retirement thing. I think it'd be different if you were older, because if you had retirement income coming from the United States and you renounced, you'd still have to file US tax returns because you have US income.
Okay, so people do your research.
Yeah.
And another question on traveling back to the US. So they told you that you now, can't enter the citizen line. What are the conditions for you to travel back?
Yeah, Canada has visa-free access to the United States as you coming to Canada. So,
okay.
And I'm not going to go down and try to stay there for 9 months. So like, to me, I didn't lose anything. And Canadians can travel to pretty much just as many countries in the world that US citizens can go to. So I didn't feel like I was really losing anything as far as travel privileges go.
Yeah, I can see that would be a lot different depending on where you got your second citizenship. And this is where the whole question of, which countries are the best to get second citizenship
like
comes into place.
I know Mexicans have to have a visa to visit the United States. So like if Mexico had been my second citizenship, then it might be a different situation.
Maybe I'll have to get Andrew Henderson or someone on the podcast to do that other topic on like what are the best passports.
Yeah.
But yeah, Canadian, I mean, it kind of seems like the ideal scenario. Okay, let me see if I have any other questions for you. Do you think you'll ever regret this decision?
No. In fact, I have a lot of friends that wish they could do the same thing that I've done.
Yeah.
Who may not be as fortunate enough to have been given another citizenship by birth. So I have a lot of friends that would leave if they had the ability to. And the news, sometimes I'll just go and look at the CNN news or whatever just to see what's going on down there. And you hear about all these shootings, and it's just so terrible for a lot of people. And up here, I know that there's problems, but it's relative to the United States, it's so much less. Like here, I leave my door unlocked and people get packages delivered, and there's no worry that it will be stolen off of your doorstep. And
I just had a package stolen. It's been a month. I'm still talking to customer service.
Yeah, like I think I ordered something from a store not too long ago, and they just couried it over here. And then it was like several days later, I went to check the front door of the building, and the package was like sitting out there. I was like, this has been sitting there for like 3 or 4 days. Like if this was in the US, it'd probably be stolen.
Within 3 hours, probably. Everyone has cameras now.
Yeah, I think just here, for the values that are important to me, it's so much better that I'm not going to want to go back. So I don't think I'll have any regrets.
I'm really happy for you. I'm so glad that you came on the podcast. Do you have any words of advice for anyone who might be considering this or struggling with this decision?
I guess you just have to decide if it's worth it for you. Maybe not advice, but I always wonder, like, why people choose to go live as expats and then still participate in the US system, which to me doesn't really make a lot of sense, because I left because I wanted to leave the US. And then you see these people, like there's some YouTubers where they move to Ecuador or something, but they still work for US companies and they still have US bank accounts and they still kind of talk like Americans that are tourists. And whereas my experience was more like, oh, okay, I want to leave and go immerse myself in another culture. Like if you had a second citizenship and you're thinking about, oh, should I renounce? I mean, I think if someone wants to, I would encourage them to do it, but maybe consider what you're giving up. Like, think about how often are you going back, and how involved are you with US issues? Do you still have US bank accounts? Do you read the US news every day and all that, So I think that will kind of gauge how ready you really are. So like if you're someone that's still quite attached, then you're probably going to feel more like disrupted or more of a change. But if you're someone that's already like kind of moved on, and like I would just say, if that's you, then try not to worry about the stress of the divorce and just rip the Band-Aid off. And
Lots of relationship metaphors here.
But yeah, I'm not trying to like say, oh, the US is terrible, everyone should leave. And, but if that is you, if it is something you want to do, then I would encourage people to go through the process, I guess.
Thank you so much, Erica. What's on your bucket list for this year? Where are you going now?
Well, I'm interested in going to Cuba.
That's a good choice.
That's a thing I think the US citizens aren't supposed to go to. I'm interested in investing in crypto because that's problematic for US citizens. I'm interested, but yeah, other than that, it hasn't really changed. Like I want to go back to Mexico, and that is not really any different if you're American or not. Right. And I'm interested in going to Norway. And so I'll probably just carry on with the same life that I was living and just have less to worry about.
I haven't come across any sorts of interviews or content where people have given such detailed information and advice about what it was like. So really grateful to you. And I'm sure everybody listening is as well, for giving us a view of this topic that hasn't been sensationalized or politicized or been all about money, because all the headlines for renouncing citizenship have to do with US celebrities that gave it up or billionaires. Yeah. It's great to hear from a real person. So yeah, living your life. Great. Very inspiring. Thank you again. And thanks everyone for listening. We will see you again next week. Bye everyone.
Okay. Bye.
You can listen to the extended version of this interview, plus more than 100 other episodes with online entrepreneurs, world travelers, digital nomads who are living unconventional lives all over the world over at badassdigitalnomads.com.